Hello everybody, getting ready to do lesson 8.3 part 2 of 6th grade math today. And part 2 of 8.3, solving percent problems, has 32 points here on your classwork sheet. And 7 points will go into your notebook or notebook guide. Students, put your name, date, period here. Due date for my onliners and homeschoolers. Let's go right into page 1. This goes in your notebook, students. 2 points, finding a percent of a number. A percent is equivalent to the ratio of a part to a whole. To find a percent of a number, you can write a ratio to represent the percent and find an equivalent ratio that compares the part to the whole. So to find 30% of 400, remember we did that problem in part 1, you can use proportional reasoning. So an example of proportional reasoning. And then we're going to also show an example here of multiplication. So for proportional reasoning, 30 over 100 would equal how many over 400 would be the question. So how do we get here? We might have to multiply 100 by 4 to get 400, correct? So we're going to have to multiply 30 by 4 to get our blank over here. Because we multiplied 100 by 4 here, we got to multiply our 30 by 4 to get our number over here. So this part here is what we're looking for. This is the whole here, and then this will be the part of the whole. To get that, 30 times 4 would equal 120, so 30% of 400 would be 120. Now multiplication, 30% of 400 would be the same thing as 30 over 100 of 400. So to do that mathematically, first we have to understand that the word of indicates multiplication. This is a word here that indicates multiplication. So 30 over 100 of 400 would be the same thing as 30 over 100 times 400. And that, of course, is 120. 30 times 400 would be 1200 over 100. When you simplify, you get 120. Okay, let's go into an example here to show some of this. Example 1, use proportional reasoning to find 28% of 25. So step 1 here, write a proportion comparing the percent to the ratio. So we have a 28% here of 25. So to do that, we have a blank over 25 will equal 28 over 100. We know 28% as a fraction is the same thing as 28 over 100. And we want to know what 28% is of 25. So this is where your part will be of 25, and then this is our whole down here. We put our whole down in the denominator like we do over here. So notice that 25 is a factor of 100. 25 is a factor of 100. We do know that. So step 2 would be find the multiplication factor. So how many times does 25 go into 100 would be the question. So 25 will go into 100, and then whatever the factor is to 100, we have to use that factor to find what 28 is of 28% is of 25. So here's our part. This is our part we're trying to find here, and then our whole is down here. So 4 times 25 equals 100. So for over here, so for 25 times 4 will equal 100, we have to multiply something that will give us 28. So 4 times this amount here will give us 28. So some number times 4 equals 28. What number times 4 equals 28 is the question. And step 3 will be find the numerator. Since 4 times 7 equals 28, 28% of 25 will equal 7. So we did that using a proportion. So 7 over 25 equals 28 over 100. Therefore, 28% of 25 is 7. Here is your amount. B, multiply by a fraction to find 35% of 60. So we're going to use a fraction now to find 35% of 60. So step 1, write the percent as a fraction. How do you write 35% as a fraction? So 35 of 60 would be the same thing as 35 over 100. That would be 35% of 60. Okay, so how will we go ahead to solve that? Step 2, multiply. So 35 over 100 times 60. Remember what ELF means. It means multiplication here. So 35 over 100 times 60. So we're going to multiply straight across. So 35 times 60 would be 2,100 over 100. And then when we simplify that, we get 21. So 35% of 60 would be 21. Therefore, 35% of 60 is 21. Okay. C, multiply by a decimal to find 5% of 180. So step 1, write the percent as a decimal. How do you write 5% as a decimal? 5% equals 5 over 100, which is the same thing as 0.05, correct? So now, step 2 will be to multiply. So 180 times 0.05 will equal 9. So 0.05 times 180 will equal 9. You can use a calculator, or you can do this using long multiplication down here, students. So 5% of 180 is 9. Okay, so we're going to reflect now a little bit on what we've just studied here. Analyze relationships. In B, the percent is 35%. What is the part and what is the whole? So going back to B, remember the 35% problem with that. And then down here, explain how to use proportional reasoning to find 35% of 600. So in B, the percent is 35%. What is the part and what is the whole of that one? 21, remember going back to the 35% problem, 21 is the part and 60 is the whole. We're trying to find 35% of 60, and we came up with 21. So 21 is the 35% of 60. What's 50% of 60? It'd be 30. So it's 35% would have to be less than 30. And then down here, explain how to use proportional reasoning to find 35% of 600. Write the percent as a ratio and write an equivalent ratio comparing the unknown part to 600. So 35 over 100 would equal how much over 600 is basically the proportion that we have to set up. So 100 times 6 equals 650. 100 times 6 would equal, so multiply 35 times 6 would equal 210. This is 100 times 6 equals 600, students. It does not equal 650. This is incorrect. 100 times 6, the factor here, how we go from 100 to 600 is multiply by 6. So we multiply 35 by 6 and we get 210. So 35% of 600 would be 210. So 35% of 600 will be 210. 100 times 6 is 600. Okay, so your turn here. Find a percent of each number. So 38% of 50 would be what, students? And then 27% of 300 would be what, students? And then 60% of 75 would be what, students? Teachers, give your students about 3 or 4 minutes for this. Okay, so 38% of 50 would be 19. 27% of 300 would be 81. And then 60% of 75 would be what? It would be 45. So that would be your solutions there, students. Let's get into another example here. Find a percent given a part. So in a whole, you can use proportional reasoning to solve problems in which you need to find a percent. So you can use proportional reasoning to solve problems in which you need to find a percent. So to do that, let's try one. Example 2. The school principal spent $2,000 to buy some computer equipment. Of this money, $120 was used to buy some new keyboards. What percent of the money was spent on keyboards? So we need to find what percent 120 is of 2,000. Step 1. Since you want to know the part of the money spent on keyboards, compare the part to the whole. So we need to compare 120 to 2,000. So the part in this case, and the whole in this case, is 120 over 2,000. So we're going to put our whole in the denominator and our part in the numerator like this. So we've got a fraction set up right here. And we'll get into that in part 3. That's part 2 of 8.3, Animated PowerPoint Math Video at AOL.com for questions or course materials. Thank you very much.